January 1st, 2018. The Dawgs are playing in the Rose Bowl. They kick off in about 1 hour, and we're about to go watch it.
Go Dogs! Go Dogs, beat Oklahoma. Go Dogs.
Oh no! Looking for the end zone, delivers.
All right, Vol fans, all right, SEC fans, Catfish here. We're bringing it to you live from the Volunteer Roadshow Studios in the City of Angels, Los Angeles, California. And we've got a special guest on the show. Scott, we're glad you're on the show with us, and kind of tell us who you're repping there.
Well, thanks for having me. My name is Scott Duval, and I have a small video production company based here in Athens, Georgia. I also am a podcaster and podcast producer. I produced the show Waiting Since Last Saturday. We've produced 125 episodes. I'm actually editing episode 126 right now. It is our Georgia versus Alabama national championship game preview. So, yeah, I'm just kind of a jack of all trades. I'm pretty good with video. I'm pretty good with audio, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Well, we're glad you're on the show, and we've got a lot of Georgia fans that watch us. I'm sure there's some of them out there that's seen your stuff, but
okay.
I want to talk to you about the season. I know you've had some ups and downs. Tell me your perspective from you as a fan, how the season has gone up until now.
Well, I think that, being a lifelong Georgia fan, we've kind of considered ourselves more of a tortured fan base, if you will, because we've sat here and watched all of these other teams in the Southeastern Conference, including Clemson also with last year winning national championships. Tennessee did it in 98, and then you've had Alabama, it seems like 12 times in the past 5 years win it. You had Auburn win it once, and they flirted with it again. They had LSU, and it was almost just like one of those things where you're just so close, but not really. And that's kind of where we as Georgia fans kind of come from. We have always set ourselves up for that kind of dive at the end, and I mean, we still love Mark Richt. We respect him and wish him the best in Miami, but that's kind of why he is not the coach anymore. And now that we have Kirby Smart. So that's kind of the background of being a Georgia fan, at least from my perspective. And but this season, it's been special. And if you go back and listen to our podcasts back at the beginning of the year, our season preview, I guess I was a little bit bold. I predicted a 11-1 regular season record. I predicted we would lose to Florida because that's just kind of a thing that always been happening to Georgia. And I predicted us beating Auburn for the second time. I didn't really think that we would lose to them the first time, but I predicted us beating them in the SEC championship game. So for me, I'm not really surprised because paying so much close attention to this Georgia team and what Kirby has brought, it just kind of had a semblance of feeling, especially when those four seniors, Davin Bellamy, Lorenzo Carter, Nick Chubb, and Sonny Michel, decided to come back for their senior year. We were very bullish on the Bulldogs, and we touted this season as the revenge tour, and I think we accomplished that. We kind of avenged our loss to everybody that took us out in 2016.
Well, I tell you what, I made a comment on one of my earlier videos about what Georgia and Kirby Smart has done this year. It's almost unfair, and I think that they need to start calling Georgia 5-star U after their recruiting haul, and there almost needs to be not a salary cap, but kind of to make it fair for us Tennessee fans, maybe a star cap. You can only have so many stars, and then you're out of luck, and you have to start doing some walk-ons. But I tell you what, Kirby Smart has turned that ship around, and I'm very impressed with what he's done. I want to talk about the Rose Bowl. Take us through your day. We saw the video, and I'm going to put a link of it at the end. Kind of tell everybody how your day went all the way up through the end to when it was a done deal.
Well, as you can imagine, it was appointment television really for everybody here in Athens. And we had already set our plans many days before because we knew we weren't going to the Rose Bowl. I actually had tickets to the Rose Bowl, but I had two. And as you saw in the video, I have two sons that are very passionate about Georgia. And so it was almost like couldn't pick one of them to go. And I was going to take my wife, but that wasn't going to be a thing either. She understood. So we got all of our, I guess, provisions together. Everybody had everything planned out like any good Southern tailgating fair would be. And it just kind of started out where you're just kind of tapping your feet, waiting. We watched the Auburn game. That was something else. I guess they're the first team to lose, to be 0-2 in the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium. But that was kind of fun to see because I think it's funny that we can all agree that Auburn is kind of an objectionable team to all of us. But we made it over to our friend's house. But before then, I kind of had that because I'm a videographer, I'm a filmmaker, whatever you want to call it. I do this often where whether I'm going to a Georgia game or going to any kind of event, I always have my camera. This is actually the camera I shot it on, this little Canon G7X. And at the beginning of the video, you see it just propped up on my car. And I was like, you know what? I'll just kind of introduce what we're about to do. And if something good happens, then maybe I'll have it. So I kept it rolling. I like to add some cool transitions in there. If you'll pay attention to the video, when my oldest son does beat Oklahoma, there's a little camera flip and added that little transition, and just to make it a little bit extra special than kind of your average video. And to the game or going into our friend's house, made to get some B-roll of all the fixins that we were starting, and then started really focusing in on people's reactions. And that's kind of where the edit starts, of where you see my oldest son sitting there, and then piece in the scores. But as it was happening real time, as everybody knows, I mean, that was a gut-wrenching game to watch, even for non-Georgia fans, and I'm sure for Oklahoma fans as well. And it was up and down. I mean, it was one of the most emotional roller coaster games I've ever watched, probably the only one since the SEC championship in 2012, or really the Tennessee game last year in Sanford Stadium with the Hail Mary. So I got to give y'all props for that. But it was a wild range of emotions, a lot of excitement, a lot of depression almost at the end of that second quarter, because Oklahoma did not look like they could be stopped, and Baker Mayfield was as good as advertised in that first quarter. But the thing to me watching the game, I think the turning point was the squib kick. It was just a bizarre play that happened, and Tay Crowder. I tweeted something out after that game that it looked like Tay Crowder was Derek Jeter backhanding a line drive up the middle, and the fact that he had the wherewithal to not only smother that ball but fall down because there were precious seconds left. And a funny anecdote on this: Seth Emerson is the beat writer for University of Georgia, and he wrote in a column that Jim Chaney, our offensive coordinator, had already left the booth when that squib kick happened. And so Kirby Smart and James Coley, our wide receivers coach, had to basically draw up a play, and luckily they drew up a real good one, a 9-yard out to Terry Godwin. As time expired, we were able to punch that timeout, and Rodrigo hits a career-long 55-yarder, longest field goal ever in the Rose Bowl. So that gave us a lot of confidence, like, hey, we're only down 2 scores. And, Kirby Smart was probably, a wizard with his halftime speech, firing up those guys. But, this is a special team, this 2017 season. It feels like a team of destiny because you have all the characters. You have the All-American boy, Jake Fromm, who comes in as the backup when our starter gets hurt. You've got the stalwart running backs of Sony Michel and Nick Chubb, who love Georgia so much they decided to forego the NFL and come back for their senior year. You have the stud linebacker, the shutdown, the run stopper of Roquan Smith, and he made his presence felt late in the game in the second half. And then you have the quirkiness of Rodrigo with the goggles and being able to hit kicks under pressure. So the game was kind of a microcosm to the characters of this season that's been going on. And so, I mean, as you kind of fast forward to when Javon Wims caught the go-ahead, he caught the go-ahead touchdown when we were up 38-31, and then to lose the lead again. It was just the air out of the tires. And I think the thing is, I was thinking most right there in that fourth quarter when Sony fumbled. He hadn't fumbled since his freshman year. And I was just, I was kind of sitting there thinking, like, gosh, we might lose this game, but please let Sony just touch the ball again. I don't want him to go out that way. I was thinking of him. I wasn't thinking of me or my fandom at that time. And wow, did he ever atone for himself? After Nick Chubb tied the game and went to first overtime was as gut wrenching as ever. I think you'll see in the video when I put up that graphic where it says overtime right on that hit of the music, and then you saw my hand shaking and my knee was tapping, and then the second overtime, it seemed to come up very quickly. That was the point where I felt pretty good. I was even checking that ESPN score predictor app or the win percentage app, and it was trending back towards Georgia. And so in the second overtime, you'll see the kids' reaction and our reaction. I finally put the camera up right underneath and was able to capture our reaction shots on that time. It was one of those things where I wasn't sure exactly why I did that, but I'm glad I did. And they started their block that kick chant, and I didn't really think that was going to happen, but Lorenzo Carter got that paw up and blocked it. And once that happened, you see me saying, like, we just need to score. We just need to score. And it was a second down. Sony took that wild dog, as we call it, off to the left side, got 4 key blocks, and then the 5th block was none other than Jake Fromm himself, where he locked up that cornerback. And there's a split second, or a couple seconds. There's 2 seconds. A friend of mine sent me a message saying, think about that 2 seconds where you're about to win, but you haven't yet won, and how special that moment is. And it couldn't have been any truer right there. So needless to say, it's probably the best game I've ever watched. We just feel really blessed, and we're ready to take on Alabama in the national championship. It's rarefied air over here.
Well, I tell you what, I put it right up there, the top 2 or 3 games I've ever seen, and I've been watching college football for 45 years, and it was a lot. I tuned in at halftime right as they were kicking the 55-yard field goal, and I didn't have a lot of faith. I'm an SEC homer, and I was pulling for Georgia. I just thought Baker Mayfield was just going to be too much. And speaking of Baker Mayfield, I think I'm not too far from the Rose Bowl. I think I seen him on the street corner holding a sign said, "Down on my luck, hit some hard times, anything will help." I don't know if that was him, but it kind of looked like him. But I tell you what, that was a great, great game. And I tell you what, I appreciate you coming on the show, and I want everybody to go check out his podcast. I'm going to put the link in the description, and I'm also going to put the video. That's a fantastic video. I'm not even a Georgia fan, but I kind of got emotional watching that because I can relate. I remember times when I've been right there with my team. So thanks for coming on the show there, Scott.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and I'd really like to say thanks to anybody who's commented on that video. The one common theme seems to be that it could have been any family, and I think that's why it worked, and I think that it got some virality that way, is because really it was any Georgia fan in that situation. So I appreciate you having me on, and thanks for plugging my business and my podcast.
Well, I want you to say something with me. I end the show this way, so say it with me. Go Vols! We're going 15-0. I promise you that.
You want me to say that?
No.